The line breaks, not slowly. All at once, a roar rises from the ground itself. Hooves slam. Metal shrieks. Men shout words that dissolve into noise. The air tightens. Breathing hurts. The earth trembles like it knows what's coming. Someone is screaming orders. No one can hear them. A banner disappears. A shield spins away. The sun flashes off steel, blinding, and vanishes behind dust so thick it swallows sound. Time fractures. Left, right, forward, stop. Nothing makes sense. The ground is slick now. Not with water. Footing fails. Lines bend. Then they snap. Horses crash into flesh. What explodes? Iron rings again and again, too fast to count. A wall that stood moments ago is gone. Men are running, but not away from the same thing. Some push forward into chaos. Others turn and find nothing behind them. The noise grows, then narrows. From thunder to screams. From screams to breathless gasps. A command is shouted, finally clear, but it comes too late or too early. No one knows which. A single moment stretches thin as a blade's edge. Then everything surges. The dust lifts, just enough to reveal movement. Too much movement. A mass pressing in. A mass breaking apart. The feeling that this isn't a battle anymore? It's a collapse. Somewhere inside the storm, a decision has been made. One signal. One release, and once it begins, it cannot be called back. 17 minutes. That's all it will take. But standing here, trapped in the noise and fear, it already feels endless. Like the world has narrowed two shouting mouths, wild eyes, the certainty that something irreversible has just been unleashed. When the sound finally dies, when the dust settles, who will still be standing and who will simply vanish without a trace? Asterisk, the year is 1191. The world is divided by faith, oath, and steel. The Eastern Mediterranean has become the focal point of a struggle that stretches far beyond any single battlefield. Kingdoms rise and fall, not only through conquest, but through reputation, through the stories carried back by survivors, merchants, and pilgrims. Every victory echoes across continents. Every defeat invites challenge. This is the age of the Third Crusade, an era of marching armies, fragile alliances, and leaders whose names alone can move thousands of men. The war is not a single front, but a shifting chain of sieges, skirmishes, and forced marches along hostile coasts and scorched inland routes. The land itself is unforgiving. Heat presses down without mercy. Water is scarce. Roads are narrow, flanked by forests and rolling ground that conceal movement until it is too late. Supply lines stretch thin, vulnerable to disruption. Every decision where to camp, when to march, how tightly to hold formation, this can mean survival or annihilation. The location at the center of this moment is Arast. It is not the largest city, not the most fortified, but it sits on a critical corridor between ports, strongholds, and the long road toward ultimate objectives that both sides understand all too well. Control here means momentum. Loss here means retreat, hesitation, and political fallout that reaches royal courts, thousands of miles away. Both armies know this. Tension has been building for days. Movement is cautious. Scouts vanish. Signals are misread. Each side watches the other, waiting for a mistake. Not a grand failure, just a single crack. A gap in formation. A lapse in discipline. Fear travels faster than messengers. Men whisper about previous engagements, about units swallowed whole, about formations that held until they didn't. Veterans remember. Newer soldiers listen, silently adjusting their grips on spear and shield. There's no certainty, only calculation. The war has already proven that bravery alone is not enough. Order matters. Timing matters. Leadership matters. One rash action can undo months of careful advance. One moment of hesitation can invite disaster, And yet, the pressure to act grows heavier with every mile marched. To move forward without engaging feels dangerous. To stop feels worse. Supplies dwindle. Morale phrase. Every sunrise brings the possibility that today will be the day lines finally cross by the time both forces approach Arsuf. The atmosphere is thick with expectation. Not excitement. Not confidence. Expectation. Something is coming. Everyone feels it, but no one can see its shape yet. The commanders study the terrain. The soldiers study each other. The silence between movements grows louder than any clash. History, in this moment, is balanced on discipline and restraint once broken cannot be repaired. They rise before the sun. Armor is checked in silence. Straps tightened. Buckles pulled until they bite. No one jokes. No one complains. Routine has replaced fear, not because fear is gone, because routine keeps it contained. These soldiers are professionals. Many have marched for years. They know the weight of their equipment down to the ounce. They know how long they can fight before exhaustion dulls their reflexes. They know the punishment for breaking formation, especially that training has drilled one truth. Into them above all others, hold the line. Not for glory, not for impulse. For survival, each man knows his place. Shoulder to shoulder, shield overlapping shield. Movement measured in steps, not strides. Even in chaos, discipline is meant to prevail. Their days are repetitive. March, halt, eat quickly. Check weapons. Sleep lightly. Always listening. Always waiting. Orders are brief and unquestioned. A shouted command is law. Hesitation invites corrections, sometimes brutal, always immediate. Punishment is not theoretical. Men have been beaten, demoted, cast out. The message is clear. The formation matters more than the individual. Emotion is a liability. Anger clouds judgment. Fear fractures cohesion. Courage must be controlled, rationed, released only when commanded. Some of them have seen battle already. They carry memories they don't speak of. Others are still untouched by combat, their confidence built on drills and stories rather than experience. Yet in the line, those differences disappear. Armor hides faces. Discipline equalizes fear. They respect their leaders, but more than that, they fear failure. Not death, failure. The moment when instinct overrides order. The moment when one man steps forward too soon. Or falls back when he should not. Because when one breaks, others follow. At night, they lie awake listening to distant sounds. Hooves wind through trees. The murmur of another army just beyond sight. Sleep comes in fragments. Dreams are short and sharp. No one knows exactly when it will happen. Only that it will. Before the march resumes, final instructions are given. Calm voices. Familiar words. Stay close. Watch the signals. Ignore provocation. Trust the command. They nod. They always do. Inside, though, tension coils tighter with every step. They can feel eyes on them from unseen ground. They can feel the weight of expectation from commanders, from kings, from history itself. They are ready. They are disciplined. They believe that will be enough. None of them yet understand how quickly discipline can be tested, and how thin the line is between control and catastrophe. Asterisk. The first warning is not an attack. It is restraint. The enemy is close, now closer than expected, but nothing happens. No full advance. No decisive move. Just pressure, constant, unrelenting, like a weight held inches above the chest. Never quite dropped. The formation continues forward, step by measured step. Armor creaks. Leather strains. Breathing grows heavier under the sun. Sweat runs into eyes, stings, blurs vision. Still, the line holds. Then come the irregularities. Scouts who should have returned by now are missing. Not confirmed dead. Not seen retreating. simply absent. Their silence spreads unease down the ranks. No one speaks of it aloud, but eyes flick toward the flanks more often. The tree line feels closer than before. Signals begin to misalign. A horn sounds short, controlled, but the answering call is delayed. A banner lifts where two should rise together. Commands are repeated, sharper, slower, as if clarity alone might restore order. Movement appears at the edge of vision, always just out of reach. Riders dart forward, then pull away. Infantry shifts as if preparing to strike, then freezes. The effect is maddening. Every feint demands restraint. Every restraint drains focus. Men begin to feel it in their muscles, the urge to move first. Projectiles start falling. Not volleys, singles, then pairs. They land close enough to provoke, but not enough to justify response. Shields lift instinctively. Discipline forces them back down. Each near miss tightens nerves further. Time stretches. Minutes feel like hours. Standing becomes harder than fighting would be. The body wants release. The mind starts filling the silence with imagined outcomes. Every breath sounds too loud. Every sudden noise triggers a flinch quickly suppressed. Whispers ripple through the line, not words. Just tension passed shoulder to shoulder. Veterans recognize it immediately. This is the moment when formations fail. Not in panic, but in impatience. The enemy presses closer. Not all at once. In segments, one side of the line feels heavier, more crowded. The other remains strangely open. It feels deliberate, like attention is being pulled in one direction while something else gathers unseen. Orders remain unchanged. Hold, but now. Even holding feels like an action, an effort that drains strength faster than movement would. Shields tremble from fatigue. Arms ache from maintaining readiness. Discipline is no longer passive, is a constant fight against instinct. A rider breaks from the opposing line and rushes forward, then veers away at the last moment. Laughter carries faintly across the distance. It is not joy. It is testing. Someone in the ranks takes half a step forward. Just half. He stops himself, but others notice. Officers move quickly, correcting posture, restoring alignment. No punishment is given, but the warning is clear. The line is thinning, not in numbers, but in patience. The sun shifts. Shadows change angle. Heat presses down harder. Throats burn. Water is rationed. Every discomfort magnifies the sense that something must happen soon, or everything will unravel. Then comes the most dangerous sign of all, confidence, not in victory, but in inevitability. The quiet belief that the clash cannot be delayed much longer. That when it comes, it will be sudden, overwhelming, decisive. Men begin to imagine the moment before it arrives. How they will move, when they will strike, what it will feel like when restraint finally breaks. That is when discipline is most fragile, because the warning signs are no longer external. They are inside the line itself, and once that threshold is crossed, there is no signal loud enough to stop what follows. It begins without a clear beginning. There is no single sound everyone hears. No signal everyone sees. What happens next unfolds unevenly, like a crack spreading through stone, silent at first. Then sudden, everywhere at once. Pressure surges along the line. A section tightens. Another shifts. Someone reacts to movement that may or may not be real. A command is shouted, sharp and precise. But it collides with noise and motion before it can settle. The distance closes, hooves thunder across the ground. Fast enough to shake balance, loud enough to drown thought. Dust erupts under impact, turning shapes into silhouettes. The air fills with the smell of sweat, leather, earth too much at once. The line absorbs the first contact. Shields jolt backward, then lock. Feet dig in. The formation holds, but only by force of habit, not comfort. Arms strain. Shoulders burn. Every man feels the shock travel through bone. Sound fractures, metal rings not in rhythm, but in chaos. Wood cracks. Commands blur into shouts without direction. The world narrows to what is directly ahead and collapses even further into instinct. Movement spreads. What begins as controlled response becomes collective momentum. One section presses forward harder than ordered. Another mirrors it, unwilling to be left exposed. The alignment bends, not breaking yet, but no longer perfect. A signal is raised. Some see it. Some don't. Those who do react immediately. Those who don't feel the surge beside them and move anyway. The line lurches forward as a single mass, not cleanly, not evenly, but irresistibly. This is the release. Dust thickens until the horizon disappears. Shapes rush past, indistinct and fast. The ground is no longer stable, it shifts underfoot, churned and uneven. Balance becomes an effort. Direction becomes a guess. 17 minutes begin to stretch. Noise peaks, then overlaps itself, becoming a constant roar rather than individual sounds. Time loses structure. There is only motion and resistance, forward and back. Pressure meeting pressure. What was once a wall becomes a wave. Momentum builds its own authority. Individuals are carried along by the mass around them, no longer choosing direction but contributing to it. Commands still exist, shouted with urgency, but they arrive too late to control what is already moving. Pockets of resistance collapse suddenly, not with dramatic finality, but with quiet inevitability. A space opens. The wave pours through it. Elsewhere, resistance holds longer, creating uneven flow, fast in some places, stalled in others. Confusion multiplies. Some push forward into thinning opposition. Others find themselves surrounded by motion they did not expect. The sense of orientation dissolves. Front and flank become meaningless distinctions. The dust lifts just enough to reveal scale. Too much movement. Too many bodies shifting at once. Lines that existed moments ago are gone, replaced by scattered clusters, moving in different directions for different reasons. Then the sound begins to change. The roar fractures into bursts, sharp, brief, then fading. Resistance diminishes unevenly. Momentum continues forward even as opposition gives way, carrying the wave farther than planned. 17 minutes are almost gone. Breathing becomes the loudest sound a man can hear. Each breath is forced, ragged, hot. Arms feel distant, heavy, slower than thought. Vision clears in flashes, then clouds again, and then without warning. The motion stops, not gradually. Abruptly, the wave breaks against emptiness. There is nothing left to push. Against silence falls in pieces. First, the shouts vanish. Then the clamor. Finally, only wind and breath remain. Dust hangs suspended, drifting slowly back to earth as if reluctant to settle. Men stand where they are. It's uncertain whether to move. They look around, trying to understand what the last moments have created. Shapes emerge from the haze, some familiar, some not. Spaces appear where formations should be. Distances feel wrong. No one cheers. No one speaks. The sudden absence of noise is heavier than the chaos that came before it. Ears ring. Hands tremble. The realization sets in that whatever just happened cannot be undone. 17 minutes. That is all it took. Not for destruction alone, but for certainty to vanish. For control to dissolve into momentum. For a moment of restraint to transform into something far larger than any individual command. Officers begin shouting again. Cautiously now. Not orders to advance, but to stop. To reform. To count. Men obey slowly, as if waking from a shared dream. Some turn in circles, trying to locate their unit. Others remain frozen, staring into the settling dust. The ground tells a story the air no longer does. Imprints everywhere. Broken lines. Paths carved by motion rather than intention. Evidence of speed, force, and sudden absence. No one knows yet what the numbers will say. No one knows who is missing. No one knows how this will be recorded. They only know this. Something decisive has occurred. Something faster than planning. something too powerful to fully explain. And as the dust finally settles and silence claims the field, one question hangs heavier than all the rest: was this victory? Or was it chaos that simply ended first? Asterisk, the first response is order, not urgency. Not panic order. Horns sound in controlled intervals. Banners rise again, carefully spaced. Officers shout commands meant to rebuild shape from disorder. The priority is clear: stop movement, restore hierarchy, reestablish authority over what just happened. Men are pulled back into lines. Units are told to stand fast. No pursuit. No advance. No celebration. Counting begins immediately. Names are called. Once, then again. Voices echo across the field, swallowed by distance and dust. Some answers come late. Others don't come at all. Officers mark tallies on tablets, then erase them. Convinced the numbers must be wrong, they are never consistent. Messengers are dispatched to the flanks, then farther out. Orders are strict: locate stragglers, confirm positions, recover equipment, report anything unusual. Nothing is left to assumption. Every absence must be explained on paper if nowhere else. Search parties move cautiously. They don't fan out recklessly. They follow paths carved by the surge lines of churned earth. Scattered gear, disrupted ground that tells its own fragmented story. These paths don't always align with official formations. Some veer sharply. Others end abruptly. Questions begin to surface. Why did certain units advance farther than ordered? Why do some officers recall signals others insist were never given? Why do accounts of timing differ so dramatically? Interrogations are informal at first. Quiet conversations between commanders and subordinates. Recollections are fresh, emotional, inconsistent. Men struggle to place moments in sequence. Everything blurred. Everything overlapped. Later, the questions become formal. Statements are taken. Language is corrected. Ambiguities are smoothed out. Phrases like "it seemed" and "I thought" are replaced with "it was observed" and orders were followed. The tone changes. Discrepancies are noted but not emphasized. Contradictions are attributed to dust, exhaustion, confusion. Reasonable explanations. Acceptable ones. Still, the gaps remain. Some reports reference movements that no longer appear in later summaries. Some names appear once, then vanish entirely from the record. Timelines tighten, becoming unnaturally precise, as if certainty can be imposed. After the fact, searches continue into the evening. Most are accounted for. Most equipment is recovered. Positions confirmed. But not everything fits. There are moments that cannot be placed. Actions that cannot be traced back to a clear command. The official response grows quieter. No announcements. No public acknowledgement of uncertainty. What is said is brief, confident, decisive. The incident is framed as controlled, intentional, successful, privately. Officers exchange looks. Asterisk, they know how close control came to slipping. How thin the margin truly was. How easily momentum could have turned against them. But those thoughts stay contained. Records are finalized. Drafts are revised. Certain details are condensed into single lines. Others are omitted entirely, not because they are false, but because they complicate the narrative. The priority now is stability. An army cannot afford doubt. Leaders cannot afford questions about control. Victory must appear inevitable, not narrowly held together by discipline and chance. And so the investigation ends not with resolution, but with closure. An official version emerges. Clean, confident, repeatable. The field is left behind. The war continues. New objectives replace old ones. Time moves forward, carrying the accepted story with it. Yet beneath that story, traces remain in conflicting testimonies. In erased notes, in the quiet understanding shared by those who stood there, they know that what happened in those 17 minutes cannot be fully reconstructed. Not because evidence is missing, but because the truth itself was unstable in motion. And some questions, once sealed beneath authority and ink, are never meant to be reopened. Asterisk. Once the field is cleared and the records are sealed, Explanation replaces experience. What happened must now be understood, or at least framed in a way that can be repeated, taught, and defended. That is where the theories begin. They do not emerge all at once. They surface gradually through chronicles, letters, second-hand accounts, and the uneasy gaps between official words, the most widely accepted. Explanation is also the most reassuring, according to this view. The incident was the result of absolute discipline. The line held under relentless pressure until the precise moment of release. When the signal finally came, it was intentional, coordinated, and devastating. The speed and scale of the outcome are cited as proof. Only a controlled force could have achieved such a result so quickly. Supporters of this theory point to training, leadership, and experience. They argue that what appears chaotic in the moment was, in fact, controlled aggression and overwhelming response unleashed at exactly the right second. But this explanation depends on one assumption: that everyone saw the same signal at the same time. Eyewitness accounts challenge that. Some recall acting on a command. Others insist they moved simply because the line beside them surged. A few describe no signal at all, only momentum. If discipline was perfect, why did no one agree on how it was released? A second interpretation is less flattering and more fragile. This theory suggests the line was on the verge of breaking. Fatigue, pressure, and prolonged restraint had pushed discipline to its limits. When movement began, it was not a clean command, but a near failure that turned forward instead of backward. According to this view, momentum saved the day. The surge overwhelmed opposition before confusion could spread inward. What later became celebrated as decisive action may have begun as uncontrolled release. Evidence for this lies in the uneven advance. Some units moved far beyond expectation. Others hesitated, unsure whether they were advancing or stabilizing. Such inconsistency is difficult to reconcile with flawless control. Official records dismiss this idea entirely. Yet drafts of early reports, those not preserved, are rumored to have used different language. Words later replaced. Tones softened. Doubt removed, if collapse was possible. Who decided it should never be mentioned? Another explanation shifts focus outward rather than inward. This theory argues that the opposing force intentionally applied pressure without committing, attempting to provoke premature movement. The extended restraint was meant to draw out impatience, to fracture discipline through exhaustion rather than direct assault. Under this interpretation, the incident was the result of calculated provocation met with sudden, overwhelming counterforce. The rapid outcome was not accidental, it was the snapping of a trap once the provocation reached its limit. Supporters note patterns in movement before the clash. Uneven pressure, feints, sudden withdrawals that felt rehearsed. But this theory raises its own questions. If the provocation was anticipated, why was there no clear acknowledgement of it afterward? Why do surviving plans and correspondence make no explicit reference to such intent? Either the trap was improvised, or the documentation was never meant to survive. The final theory is the quietest and the most unsettling. It suggests that no single explanation is sufficient because the truth was messy. Confusion, discipline, instinct, and chance collided too quickly to separate cleanly. What followed was not discovery, but selection. Details that reinforced authority were kept. Details that implied loss of control were trimmed away, not through conspiracy, but through necessity. Armies require certainty. Leaders require legitimacy. Chaos, even when it ends favorably, undermines both. So the story was simplified. Victory became inevitable. Control became absolute. 17 minutes became a single narrative instead of many overlapping experiences. If this theory is correct, the hidden truth is not a secret event but the absence of contradiction, and the most important question is not what happened, but what was removed to make the story whole. Time has a way of smoothing violence into certainty. What remains of Arsuf today is not the noise, not the dust, not the confusion of those 17 minutes, but a version of events that feels solid, finished, unquestionable. A victory neatly defined, a moment reduced to outcome. Yet history rarely unfolds that cleanly. Between commands and movement, between discipline and instinct, something happened that could not be fully controlled or fully explained. And because it ended in success, the questions were allowed to fade instead of deepen. Records were written. Names were preserved. Numbers were repeated until they became truth. What did not fit was set aside, not necessarily erased, but left without a place to belong. That is often how history hides itself. Not through lies, but through silence. The men who stood there carried their own versions of those minutes. Some remembered clarity. Others remembered confusion. Many remembered nothing at all, only the feeling that events had moved faster than intention. As years passed, certainty replaced memory. The war moved on. New battles demanded attention. The unresolved details of Arsuf became footnotes, then shadows. And yet, the questions still linger. Was the outcome decided by perfect control or by chaos that happened to move in the right direction? Did leadership command the moment or merely survive it? Was the truth lost in battle, or quietly shaped afterward? 17 minutes changed the course of a campaign, but they also left behind a silence that has never been fully filled. Perhaps that is the most honest legacy of Arsuf. Not a lesson in dominance or numbers, but a reminder that history is written after the dust settles, not while it is still in the air. So now, the final question remains with you. When victory comes from the edge of uncertainty, do we remember what happened? Or only what we needed it to mean?